This is my review of the 5 zones in Legion. First of all, I'd like to say that the zones were all enjoyable. This video is just a measure of which ones I think are better than others and why. Secondly, this is my own perspective and my own experience. I kind of went into and out of Stormheim, and my experiences of other zones might have been splintered a bit, so that could taint my experience a bit, plus there is obviously subjectivity here. Third, expect spoilers if you haven't played through these zones yourself. With that out of the way, I can begin my list. The fifth on my list is Aszuna. Now, there were a couple of things different about Aszuna right from the beginning, but those aren't the real reasons why it's fifth on my list. For instance, each of the leveling zones has a kind of a main antagonist against whom you're fighting and who you square off against for almost all of the zone's storyline. Aszuna is the exception to this. You start off fighting the Legion, which actually makes a lot more sense than most of the other zones in this expansion. While it's good that you're fighting a real variety of enemies in Legion instead of always and only fighting demons, the fact that the Legion's presence is distinctly felt only in a few zones is one of the few points against the expansion as a whole. But in Aszuna, you start off helping the Illidari fight off a Legion invasion, and then you find yourself helping Blue Drakes against withered enemies, and then finally you're helping a community of Night Elf ghosts against the Naga. It's a different antagonist for each leg of this story, but each story thread was enjoyable. As a matter of fact, I absolutely loved the quests and storyline around the Blue Dragon and Sumas the Shamed. It's plainly obvious that he's going nuts from his addiction to mana and is, in fact, dying. He's struggling with his morals and his condition, but in the end, despite the fact that he dies having done the right thing, thanking you for making his last few hours mean something. Honestly, I was expecting the Blue Dragon Elder to die at the end, and saving him made me laugh in triumph in real life. Blizzard overall did an excellent job getting the emotions of the player invested in the characters in this game, and that's another point very much in favor of Legion as a whole. While Aszuna was overall very well done, there's a problem with how the last story arc ended. Prince Ferrandis' backstory was well done and intriguing. He went against Val'sharrah at a crucial point and got turned into a ghost for his trouble. Not only he, but his people also got turned into ghosts. They resented him for this. From the player's perspective, that prince did the right thing by going against Val'sharrah, but man did he pay for doing the right thing. That is good writing. But where it turns south is this, though. Over the course of the story, Val'sharrah gives him an opportunity to join her and be released from his ghost curse. He refuses her offer. It's a difficult decision for him. You can feel him being tempted to accept. That's good writing, but the fact that his people actually loved him for rejecting Val'sharrah's proposal here makes no sense. They're praising him for doing the exact same thing that they've spent the last 10,000 years hating him for doing? What the heck, Blizzard? Upon reflection, it seems like a completely contrived happy ending. If there were an actual explanation for why these other ghosts changed their attitude, it honestly might have worked, but as it is, it makes zero sense. This story could have been a case study in how, when you do the right thing, sometimes you stand alone. Sometimes, when you do what you know is right, people ridicule you, think that what you're doing is evil even though you believe it's good, hate you. If I give examples of this or describe personal experiences about it, this video will turn political instead of being about the first great WoW expansion in almost a decade, and there's already too much political stuff flying around at the time I'm recording this, so I'd better end that rant right there. Back to Legion. Now, happy endings feel rarer in Legion than they were in previous expansions. I will get to that more in the Val'sharrah section, and the rarity of these happy endings makes them feel more precious and sweeter. The chain with the blue dragons was an excellent demonstration of that. But the thing about the blue dragon chain, it made sense. This last chain with the ghosts did not, and that is why Aszuna is at the bottom of this list. Number 4 on my list is Highmountain, and no, it's not just because the name of the zone is too obvious. Again, overall, I like the Highmountain progression. The would-be Drogbar king, Dargul the Underking, functions fairly well as a main antagonist. The plot holds together well and makes sense, and the character development for the princess you helped in uniting the tribes is good. The bombshell that there's a black dragon who's been helping the tribe out for centuries is handled pretty well, and the quest where it shows him does an excellent job of showing that these Pillars of Creation artifacts are a lot more versatile than you'd think. The reason that Highmountain is ranked low on this list is because there weren't any real events in Highmountain that grabbed my attention or moved me the way the other zones did. In fact, It would be 5 on my list if it weren't for the mishandled end of the Aszuna story. One of the few mishandled things in Highmountain. Blizzard, you've been living in California for too long if you think corn grows like that. It doesn't just jut up out of the ground like a cabbage. It grows high on a tall stalk, and the kernels don't even show until after somebody peels the husks off of the cob. Still, that's very minor. Don't get me wrong, I liked High Mountain and I enjoyed the progression of it all, and it's overall well done. It just didn't have the same heart anchoring moments that the other zones did. Number 3 on my list is Stormheim. I probably made a mistake by not sticking with it all the way through like I did with the other 3 leveling zones. I started at level 110 and came back to it and left and came back, and well, it was easy to forget the plot when I did it that way. Really, these narratives are better worked through without huge breaks. God King Skovald was an even better antagonist than the Drogbar King. They both had no sympathy for their opponents, but Skovald did an even better job of showing it. I mean, he tore a Titanic Watcher to bits so that you had to reassemble him. He enslaved a whole bunch of storm dragons. He even had you and a bunch of your Valkyr allies sent to hell. That was a very memorable part of the quest chain, literally fighting my way out of hell. And Azeroth Cell was very appropriately freaky. Those tentacles made me wonder if I was crawling around on the surface of an old god or something. One fly in the ointment is that you gathered equipment for climbing up the mountain in one quest and then didn't actually use any of the equipment you gathered. And that oiled cloak you got as a reward, that would barely keep half a Draenei's tail dry. Blizzard, do your artists and quest designers actually talk to each other? Those are again very minor quibbles, of course. It's not like Prince Ferondis' people's reaction. Number 2 on my list is Val'sharrah. I chose this zone first back in level 100, and let me tell you, it has to be the most tragic story I've ever seen in the entire Warcraft franchise. Maybe that's because I haven't read the books, but anyway, it seemed like every time I was sent out on a leg of the story to find 3 other characters, one of those characters would be dead and another would be turned evil before the end of the narrative. It felt like everything in Val'sharrah was falling apart at the seams, and if you thought Skovald was one step ahead of you, whew boy, Xavius is even worse. Not only was he one step ahead of you, he made it a point to be cruel about it. Skovald never cared much about what happened to you. He just wanted to get the Pillar of Creation from Odin. Xavius, by contrast, wants Malfurion to suffer. And does he ever? When you see Xavius riding away on a corrupted Ysera's back with an unconscious Malfurion in her talons, you will know you have hit a low point in the narrative. It felt like you only managed to get the Tears of Elune by sacrifice and luck, and it's no wonder Elune is crying. The death of Ysera is played extremely well. The fact that I did this zone first drove home the point good and early that this expansion won't be me steamrolling every threat I see with no difficulty. The story of Legion will be fraught with sacrifice and tragedy. The enemies you face are going to prove they are badasses by killing off characters that you like, not like the Iron Horde who barely managed to off Vindicator Murad and basically were on the run from a bunch of soldiers working out of tents. The Legion is a real threat, and this zone taught me that all too well. It taught me that when I go out on a quest and meet someone interesting, fun, or lovable, I may well have to watch the war with the Legion kill that character. It also made every victory that I do manage to get feel all the sweeter and all the more precious. As long as the victory made sense, that is. Obviously, number 1 on my list is Suramar. Blizzard saved the best for last, and it shows. The story was strong in all the zones, but the story in Suramar actually ties into the gameplay quite a bit. You don't even have a base of operations in Suramar until you help the first Arcanist establish one. There aren't any NPCs in that base until you go and get them, and all the while you feel like you're struggling to keep your head above water just the same way the starving resistance movement is struggling. The need to feed NPCs ancient mana really reflects that, and then there's Suramar City itself. Blizzard did some obvious things to draw your attention to the plight of the oppressed people who live there and make your heart go out to them, such as having beggars that you can give ancient mana to, but there are subtler things Blizzard did as well. Having children and families in there was a hard anchor for me. and these children make you notice them a bit more effectively than in previous expansions. There have been kids in other parts of WoW before. Look at Shattrath City's lower city in the Burning Crusade for an example of where the children don't make you recognize them. They're there, they're orphans, but the fact that they don't make noise or speak much made me feel like they're either someone else's problem or not a problem at all. The fact that I'm working with a resistance movement against a force that's oppressing families, plus the fact that I hear the children in Suramar singing or chatting about lessons or Arkwine, did an excellent job of anchoring my heart to their fate and the fate of all Suramar City. These were subtle, but they were much more effective. It also served as a terrific background for a quest chain where I had to rescue a little girl who was apparently kidnapped to be sacrificed. Her poor, hysterical mother. That was another hard anchor, and after Val'sharrah and watching Varian die, I knew that there was a solid chance that that little girl would not be making it back to her mother alive. When she did, it was a very satisfying moment. For that matter, the moment where I saw famished Nightborn civilians in line at the Waning Crescent, one by one getting fed Arkwine after a quest where I got it for them, was another hard anchor for me. Sneaking around the city disguised as a Nightborn is, well, it's got its pros and cons. On the pro side, it fits perfectly with the story and the world building. And the gameplay of having to avoid certain mobs is different from what we're used to and can be engaging and fun. On the con side, having to die often from being overwhelmed or else dive into the canals until the mobs chasing you give up can also be pretty stinking annoying. Though it is exactly what a real person would do under the circumstances now that I think about it. But just like the tragedies in Legion give sharper contrast to the sweetness to the triumphs in Legion, so too the mandatory subtlety of all this sneaking around gives a sharper contrast to and sweetens the moment when you can tromp around on a giant T-Rex and squish them all. Elites? What elites you talking about? They don't look so elite from up here in my T-Rex. Hey, I wonder if I can combine this T-Rex with a Triceratops, a Pterodactyl, a Mastodon, and a saber-toothed tiger and make an even bigger mount. I laughed out loud in real life when I got to this part the first time. I really did. I was thinking to myself, so, there's this city full of guards and demons. I can disguise myself, be very subtle and sneaky, carefully establish contacts, move resources, and get carefully into the right position. Nope! Out to Helheim with sneaking around. I'm gonna ride a T-Rex straight through town and bite their heads off. Honestly, this has to be the single most satisfying quest I have ever done in all 12 years of WoW. It's all about establishing the base case, isn't it? The Jurassic Park references here were funny, but there's one thing that could have made them even funnier and better. They could have started off the rampage by having you eat a lawyer. Fun fact. When I was a kid seeing Jurassic Park for the first time, I honestly believed that the scene where the T-Rex gets his first human victim was intended to be funny. And I believed that for one reason. That human victim was a lawyer. Yes. To me, that was enough to make it funny. Listen to the following sentence and try to tell me that it's a false statement. It is inherently funny when lawyers are eaten by dinosaurs, especially off of toilets. You think you're totally safe behind contracts and jurisdictions and paperwork? Nope! A T-Rex walks up to you and bites you in half. One thing that I'm a little worried about is whether Blizzard can keep this kind of quality up. I see a huge amount of effort put into Suramar and into all the other zones for that matter, and it's easy to see why the long content drought in Warlords happened. The effort that could have been put into a Shattrath City raid, a Farallon Field zone, or an Apexis raid went to Legion instead. Where are they going to get the effort to put into new zones? If Legion goes downhill in quality from this new height of quality that they've reached in 7.0, then it'll just kill WoW. Here's hoping they can do just as good a job in 7.1 and 7.2 as the expansion goes on. Anyhow, that's how I rank the 5 zones in Legion. Please do let me know in the comments whether you agree and what your rankings are for them.